resident of Lithuania came here and we went with my husband and nobody went to speak with him. Like, and I went to speak with him and my husband like, where are you going? Nobody's going. I said, I'm here. He's here. Let me. And I came to him. We had some fun, like jokes, laughing,
Yeah, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Right, thank you everyone and good evening. Also to members, officers, the press, public joining local development committee. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. So welcome to everyone viewing online. Some of our officers are joining this evening's meeting via Zoom. Can everyone present hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Online. See a nod from Alexander, that's great. And I can hear Jane, thank you. For those joining by Zoom, please mute your microphone if you are not speaking. I will now ask the members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves. Start to my left.
Councillor Kamali, Stratford Ward.
Councillor Femi, East Ham Ward.
Councillor Larissa Zelikowska.
Councillor Saeed Bashar.
Councillor from Manapal. Councillor Jane Love, Council Classes.
Great, thank you very much to officers.
Louis Moore, Development Manager.
Liam McFadden, Principal Planner.
Samir Ben Barrett, Principal Planner.
Sajad Planning Officer.
And online.
Jane Custance, Director of Planning and Development.
Alex Edouard, Solicitor.
Last but not least.
Marissa Hussain is back today.
Great, thank you very much. I want to remind members that when a vote is taken, it will be by way of raising your hands in order that we can capture this on screen. I've got apologies from Councillor Karen Corbyn and Councillor Sarah Lewis. Item 2 is the minutes of the last meeting from the 25th of November for approval. That's on pages 11 to 23. Members have a look, see if there's any corrections, amendments, or additions. Page 11. Page 12. 13. 14.
Appointment from Councillor Mujib Rahman.
Okay, so that,
Another meeting date, didn't.
okay, so can we record those apologies for item 1, Councillor Mujib?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so I take that as no corrections, amendments or additions for item 2, the minutes. So let's agree those as a record of approval.
Yep.
Great, thank you much. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for any of the items we heard tonight?
No, nothing at all.
No, none from me either. Item 4, determining planning applications. Members are asked to note the advice from the head of legal services on determining planning applications. Is that noted?
Noted.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much. There's announcements from the chair, requests to address the committee. I've had requests for item 6, the grey shed London City Airport. Tim Smith and Stephen Allen, are you in the room? Tim, Stephen? No? Okay. If they join online, please let them know. Item 7, no registered speakers. Item 8, 57 Hallswood Road, I've got Sana Khan and Gavin Redfern. Okay, thank you very much. The usual practice will apply tonight, up to 5 minutes in total for all speakers and objectors. Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Can we agree the remainder of the order of business as outlined in the agenda? Is that agreed?
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you very much. And would members please note any officer updates reports circulated for the meeting? Please note that full consideration of the assessment of the matters is covered comprehensively in the committee report. I trust members have read it all.
Yep.
Already some. Now can I ask officers to start the first presentation, please, for item 6, the grey shed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Chair. This is item 6. It's the structure known as the Grey Shed at London City Airport. So on the left, you have the site outlocation plan, just to north of King George V Station on the DLR. To the right is the location of the airport, which I'm sure everyone's quite familiar with. So the proposal is for the change of use of the Grey Shed from the existing sui generis use, so a full transfer operation, to a storage and distribution, which is use class 8 with associated cycle parking. To aid you a little bit, this is an aerial photo. It shows you where the structure actually is in relation to the rest of the airport. So the airport itself is clearly to the north across the Docklands. This is what we would consider to be in the, I guess you would call it the airport campus. To the right is a picture of the grey shed that exists now. Some people consider that's more blue than grey, but I'll let you decide that. Some elevational drawings of the shed you've just seen, and the floor plan. Just one floor inside, which is quite apparently used for storage. So begin with the principal development. We begin with the B8 use. So this part of the land is in a local industrial location. There are policies in the London plan and the local plan which support industrial uses, such as the proposal in these locations. When the shed was constructed, it originally was a B8 use, but in support of the airport itself, it subsequently changed to the sui generis use in 2009. This ceased in 2013, and it was then back to still airport, I think, since then. So the proposed change to B8 would be in line with the policy for local industrial locations, and it would also be matching up with the history of the site where it used to be in that use before. So proposed land use is supported. Moving on to employment impacts. So at present, the storage, as I said, is ancillary to the airport. So employed at the airport staff the building. It's not a regularly staffed building because it is just used for storage. So it's not a structure would have employees 24/7. So it doesn't provide any additional employment to the airport or the area at present. There'll be no loss of employment. So because there are no staff permanently assigned to this, there would be no which would lose jobs as a result. Changing use to an independent operator would allow a new operator to come into the site, bring their own employees. We don't know who that final occupier is yet, so we don't know how many employees that would be. But in effect, it would be a net increase over what's there now. So in terms of employment impacts, we support it. Moving on to the design and placemaking. As mentioned, the building has been there for a number of years. There are no physical changes proposed to the structure or the site. It's not highly visible from public viewpoints, and it's in keeping with the wider airport context. So that area is very industrial. It features many similar structures of sheds and industrial blocks, that kind of thing. So in design impacts, we consider it to be acceptable. Moving on to the impact on neighbouring amenities. So the B8 use is not one that's considered to give rise to significant noise or amenity impacts, particularly in the context of the airport where you have planes and other vehicles making noise anyway. It's separated from nearest residential uses by around 60 metres, and that would further mitigate any impacts. And local industrial locations are land designated in the borough for industrial uses. So there is that expectation that uses in those locations would be the noise and nuisance generating types of uses. There's some potential impact from vehicles. So vehicles accessing the site may give rise to some noise impacts. This is partly addressed by the condition on the next slide. On sustainable transport. So there are no car parking proposed as part of this development. There will be some cycle parking to be secured via condition, and a delivery and servicing plan will be secured via condition. So this document will be approved by our transport planners. That will have details of the types of vehicles to access the site, when they would do it, and their sizes and things. Similarly, that document would look at the waste management for the final user. So it's not been provided at this stage because the waste management requirements will vary depending on which user eventually takes it up. So we would have the final assessment, ESP, subject to that. Moving on to other considerations. So it's not within the Epping Forest Special Area Conservation. There'll be no increase in biodiversity to the site, but that's because there are no physical changes, and the applications relate only to the use of the structure. So in these circumstances, we would not expect an increase in biodiversity net gain. The site is in a flood zone. However, it's protected by the Thames Barrier and other flood defences in the area. During the larger application at the airport last year, a flood risk assessment was provided, which covered the entire airport site, including this campus. And that included several mitigations and procedures such as evacuation plans, that kind of thing. That's been provided by the applicant, and because there are no physical changes proposed, there would be no increase to the risk of flooding at the site or surroundings. So that remains acceptable, and all of those issues are therefore acceptable. A use which is supported in this location and has been on site historically and would result in a potential net gain in employment. There will be no physical changes to the structure, and though the appearance and amenity impacts would remain acceptable, and any of the transport impacts would be managed by the aforementioned condition. Therefore, the recommendation is to agree the reasons for approval set out in the committee report and delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development to grant permission subject to the conditions listed in Appendix. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. I want to get to see if Tim Smith and Stephen Allen, you online?
I know Tim Smith can't make it. I don't know if Stephen attends to.
Then straight to officer and any questions to the officers? Councillor Kamali, then.
I've got two questions. Firstly, how can you be so sure that it will increase employment considering you don't have any at the moment? And you're not sure how many they're going to have? Could it not be the same, like there'll be no employment at all?
Well, because there's no loss of employees at the airport, no reduction at the airport itself. So even if there was a very unlikely event that only one person works in the structure now, that'd be one additional employee that works in the area. So any employees is essentially a net gain in this case. It'd be different if perhaps if the airport said they were going to have to fire 5 people because they're no longer needed. That would be a slightly different scenario, but in this case, there's no loss of employment.
Okay, the other question is, you have flood risk and everything else, but there's nothing on fire safety or fire safety policy or anything safe for if there was a fire. Do we have any kind of policy or is there any safety in place?
So fire safety is normally dealt with at the building control stage. There are some structures which require fire safety statements, but this doesn't trigger that threshold. So normally it's over a certain height or square footage. It's also not a new building as well, so some requirements don't kick in on existing structures.
Effectively, the operator would have to make sure that they're complying with building regulations. If they were to change anything internally or externally, for example, internal alteration wouldn't necessarily need planning permission.
Yeah.
So at that point, if they were doing that, they would be required to make sure they're complying with building regulations. Same as different kind of operations, different organizations require certain fire safety standards based on operations and kind of outside of planning. So I think, within plan, there isn't really a remit for us to consider that in this application.
Have only building regulation that
Building regulations and other things would kick in.
and that's in place.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my question to the officer regarding the representation received on 32 Cameron Road. I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but if you see page 27, paragraph 2, the representation is asking to add the condition for the disability and mobility access. Just want to know how to do that. Are we to add that condition?
No, so I think there's a slight misunderstanding from the objector. In the applicant's planning statement, there is the DLR station King George and my understanding is one of the entrances to that is currently closed. I think it's the tunnel, the bridge. Yeah. What they said was if that were to open, that would increase accessibility to their site, but that's purely in the realm of TfL to decide to do that or not. It's not required for this application, so we can't really have that as a condition.
That's thank you.
Glad that's answered. Thank you very much, Councillor Patel. My questions around the airport use and especially the use of this building in terms of security concerns. And are there any that we need to be aware of, especially if another provider is going to take it on, or will the airport have additional assessments themselves?
Thank you. So, yeah, I have looked into this for you. So the structure is not actually in the airport itself. It's on the campus, which as you've seen from the overhead shot, it's separated from the actual runway and all the rest of it. Any access to the airport itself, I've been told, requires security clearance, various levels. Anyone who doesn't have that security clearance can't access the actual airport proper. So this is not publicly accessible, you know what I mean? You can drive up to it So this obviously in the interest of the airport to keep security very tight, and they think that would probably be changed from this.
Any further questions? Members, no? And then I suggest we move now to the recommendations. Yes. Local Development Committee is asked to resolve: one, agree the reasons for approval as set out in the committee report, and two, delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development to grant planning permission subject to the conditions listed in Appendix 9 of the report. All those who agree, please show of hands. Okay, that's unanimous, and now move to item 7. 142, New City Road Class.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'll be presenting item 7 at 142 New City Road. I'm sure some of you who was here back in May will recognise this from last being a similar iteration of this proposal being submitted. It was refused at that point, and the refusal decision was upheld at committee on the 29th of May 2024. And this scheme differs to the previous, as rather than demolishing the property, it would create additional flats by incorporating extensions to the existing building. The previously proposed on-site car parking space has also been omitted from the proposal, replaced with a light well. This slide shows the site location accompanied with a recent aerial image of it. The site is located in a primarily residential area on the southeastern corner of New City Road, Patrick Road, consisting of a 2-storey mixed-use Victorian corner building comprising of a ground floor commercial unit and first floor residential unit. Planning permission is sought to change the use of the basement and ground floor commercial unit into 2 self-contained units comprising 3 self-contained units comprising of 1 bedroom, 2-person unit at lower ground floor level, 1 3-bedroom, 4-person unit at ground floor level, and the subdivision of the first floor flat into 2 1-bedroom self-contained units with the erection of a double-storey rear side extension, single-storey rear extension, basement excavation and enlargement, rear window addition, demolition of rear outbuilding, and associated works to facilitate development. This slide shows the application site viewed from New City Road on the left and Patrick Road to the right. This slide shows the proposed front and side elevation from New City Road and Patrick Road respectively. This slide shows the rear and other side elevation. This slide shows the proposed AA section. This slide shows the proposed basement floor arrangements. The proposed ground floor arrangements are on the slide. This slide shows the proposed first floor arrangements and the proposed roof plan. This slide shows the key considerations that will be considered, starting with the principle of development. But first we'll look at local context. This aerial photograph illustrates the application site circled in yellow within the local context. Whilst it's primarily residential, New City Primary School, circled in blue, is located to the southeast of the site. And further site, there is a small cluster of 2-storey mixed-use units with commercial ground floors at the junction of New City Road and Boundary Road, including Boundary Road and Lonsdale supermarkets. There is local opposition to the loss of the shop, as will be detailed in Appendix 4 of the committee report and discussed at the end of this presentation. Regarding the principle of development, the National Planning Policy Framework, London Plan, Newham Local Plan all seek to consolidate out-of-centre commercial units within town centres. Whilst officers empathise with resident wishes to oppose the loss of the shop, it would be unreasonable to refuse the principle of the loss of the commercial use located outside of the town centre, where national and local policy directs these uses. Furthermore, there are 2 supermarkets located within a 5-minute walk of the application site. The proposed development would align with the borough's policies seeking to consolidate and direct town centre type uses to within designated centres and would increase the borough's existing housing stock whilst re-providing a family-sized unit on the ground floor. Therefore, the principle of development is supported. Regarding quality of accommodation, the proposal is acceptable in relation to bedroom floor space, total floor space, GIA, and built-in storage requirements. Regarding the basement flat, as can be seen in this photo, light would be received through a narrow space via a light well located along the northern and eastern site boundary. There is concern regarding the amount of light received into the living, kitchen, dining room and double bedroom spaces without internal daylight sunlight assessment to evidence the contrary, in accordance with BRE standards. This is exacerbated by the restricted outlook from the proposed basement window onto the outdoor patio space, which consists of a light well, offering limited outlook, and given its location adjacent to the public highway, would be overlooked by the general public, offering limited privacy, appearing a cramped, low-quality space to the detriment of future occupiers. Furthermore, the shared private external amenity space for the first floor flats is not supported, and the internal size and layout of the proposed first floor units are not of such an exceptional high quality or quantum that would compensate for the lack of adequate external amenity space. And given these considerations, the proposal is not supported with regards to quality of accommodation. Regarding design, whilst the mass and bulk to the rear is acceptable, there is concern in relation to the lack of loss of key architectural features and creation of a void space in the public realm. The existing corner Victorian building is considered to be in relatively good condition externally and possesses some architectural merit and unique features, including the pipe and sign features located towards the north of the New City Road elevation, large arched brick lintels above fenestration and doors, and distinct window sill detailing. The proposal would remove key architectural features such as the pipe and signage associated with the ground floor commercial unit and would lack architectural detail, including window depth, reveals, lintel detailing, appearing an uninspiring design that erodes the distinct architectural features of the existing building. Regarding the front forecourt, the excavated area for the lower ground amenity space would create a significant void in the public realm and street, considerably reducing the size of the existing footway and disrupting pedestrian flows, appearing a dominant and imposing feature on New City Road. The void space would be the first of its kind in the local area, and by virtue of its size and scale, exacerbated by the lack of landscaping along this void, would appear a discordant and out of character feature within the public realm and street, and would detract from the rhythm and character of the street. So it's not supported, and based on the above discussion, the proposal is not supported in relation to urban design. Amenity impacts include the loss of sunlight, daylight, outlook, privacy, and creation of a sense of overbearing and enclosure to nearby residential windows and gardens. By virtue of the siting, positioning, and scale of the development proposed, 8 meters from the side flank wall of number 46 Patrick Road to the west and across the road from properties to the north and east, the development would not present unacceptable amenity impacts to the neighbours to the west, east, and north, as outlined in paragraph 1.53 to 1.55 of the committee report. The extension along the southwestern boundary of the property, shared with number 144 New City Road, would extend past the rear of this neighbour, however not to a significant extent, so the reduction in daylight and sunlight to this window and impact upon its outlook, including sense of overbearing and enclosure, is not considered adverse, as outlined in paragraph 1.56 of the committee report. Uplift in residential units in a residential area would not present concern in relation to increases of noise and disturbance, and therefore the proposal is supported in relation to neighbouring amenity impacts. The removal of the vehicular access in the rear yard is in line with policies seeking to reduce reliance on vehicles, and a car-free scheme is supported and would be secured via a Section 106 legal agreement. The removal would also render the drop curb serving the space redundant, and therefore a Section 278 legal agreement will be required with highways to reinstate the pavement, which can be tied into the original Section 106 agreement. Each respective flat has cycle parking provisions in each of their respective amenity areas that meets policy requirements in relation to the quantum of cycles stored, subject to details, planning condition on the cycle store proposed. Overall, the proposal is supported in relation to delivering sustainable transport, subject to legal agreement and cycle store detail condition. With respect to waste management, each flat has waste storage provisions in each of their respective amenity areas that meet policy requirements in relation to quantum and capacity of bins, subject to a detailed planning condition regarding the store itself. Both rear gardens have access doors from Patrick Road where bins can be wheeled out for collection. However, whilst the front garden bin store is said to be accessible from the principal elevation, it is not clear where this access point is, as there would be a dwarf wall with planters preventing access to the bin store from the shared entrance. Therefore, the proposal is supported in relation to waste management, subject to planning conditions, securing further detail on the store and access arrangements proposed. In relation to other considerations, delivering sustainable development and Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation, the proposed development is supported as detailed on page 32 of the committee report, as with all other matters. So regarding consultation, during the consultation process, residents raised objection, noting the receipt of 8 objection comments and a handwritten petition opposing the application. The handwritten petition was received on the 10th of December 2024, having approximately 960 signatures with respective addresses that appear to be mainly from Newham. It is noted that some of the signatories only provide a postcode whilst others only provide a road name. The objection reasons outlined in the petition are on the following grounds: loss of commercial shop described as a local amenity, increased road traffic from people having to travel to shops further away, inconvenience and time consuming for locals to travel to shops further away, congestion and overcrowding from new residents from the proposed scheme, noise pollution from the demolition and construction works, and loss of community. The shop seemed to bring about a sense of community. Regarding the loss of the shop, officers understand that small shops such as the existing can contribute to the local area and community. However, the MPFF, London Plan and local plan policies all seek to consolidate and direct town centre type uses to define centres and other strategic allocated sites, and therefore the loss of this shop in this location would not warrant refusal. Furthermore, it is noted that there is a cluster of retail units in proximity to the application site, 200 metres to the southeast of New City Road, a 5-minute walk. Within a 5-minute walk, there is Boundary Road and Lonsdale supermarkets who provide a similar offering. Notwithstanding this, the shop falls under use class E, and therefore the owners would be within their rights to change it to another use within the same use class without requiring planning permission. The number of objectors do not relate to, a number of the objections do not relate to material planning considerations. They are matters that should be taken into account in deciding a planning application and form the sections of the committee report. Objections relating to material planning considerations have been addressed in the main body of the report, including concerns in relation to noise and disturbance, highways and neighbouring amenity, and taking this into account, whilst officers are sympathetic to the position of objectors, the loss of the shop would not be resisted. To conclude, while certain aspects of the proposal are supported, this will not overcome the unacceptability of the proposal in relation to its poor quality of accommodation, by virtue of the lack of light received and poor outlook offered to the living spaces of the basement flat, the creation of a cramped, poor quality outdoor amenity light well space for this flat, and the provision of a communal garden for the first 4 flats. And in relation to design, through the creation of a dominant and imposing void space within the public realm and street, paired with the lack of architectural detailing and removal of existing architectural features, proposed to a corner Victorian building in good condition, representing an incongruous and peaceful form of development which would fail to successfully integrate and harmonise with the character and appearance of the host building and the wider locality. Therefore, the planning committee is asked to resolve to refuse planning permission for the reasons set out on page 37 of the committee report.
Mr. John, it's a shame that the applicant isn't here because it would be good to understand. Yeah, you're here. Okay, thank you very much. You weren't here already. Yeah, so it'd be good to hear from you as to, you know, the first application came to us before, was refused, but the second application is coming to us now, and it's likely to be refused again. And in terms of me to understand, really, working with officers, has there been sort of communication as to what high quality, good quality homes looks like?
It's unfortunate, my architect was meant to be here.
Right.
I can't get on at the moment, maybe struggling, but he would have answered most of your questions. But from what I can gather, you're objecting mainly to the basement flat.
To the basement flat, the creation of the void space as well.
In general, yes, the basement flat is the key principal issue and some design issues, yeah.
So if that was taken out of the equation, would the rest are with minor adjustments?
Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to give you a direct answer, but if every other variable was to remain the same, then you would still need to overcome the design in terms of the architectural detailing and the improvements and how you're going to sort of retain some of those key architectural features from the original building. When you're introducing many residential apartments, a high quality design is therefore expected as well, which is why we consulted our urban design officers as part of this proposal, and they've reviewed the comments and reiterate them as well.
Yeah, I'm sure once you're architects and you sit down post this meeting, I'm sure you can work with officers to decide how best you go forward if you were to submit another application, and depending on the outcome of tonight. Members, any questions?
One of the things you mentioned there is demolition and construction impacts. Now, you're talking about the basement. You didn't mention it now to him, because if he has to come back again, then we'll be talking about demolition and impact. The impact it's going to have.
The impacts of the demolition or for the lower ground floor.
Yeah. It's one of the concerns. It's one of the things you have in mind that it's going to affect the building, but it's not just the basement, is it?
So, in relation to potentially digging out some ground and the demolition and construction impacts from the development, this will be, if planning permission was approved, this is considered by our environmental health team, and we would condition the application appropriately to mitigate any noise and disruption from any proposed excavation or wider development works.
Yeah, I think just to clarify on that, like this sort of application would probably require a demolition construction management plan, as we'd expect kind of any application of this sort of scale. So that comes after permission in general, because obviously once someone's had the permission, they need to go away and contractor work out timeframes, how long it's actually going to take to build, and all those different aspects. Then they will submit a construction demolition plan to us. We consult it with our highways team, transportation team, and our environmental health team, and they will review and consider whether it's acceptable, whether it will have an appropriate impact on local highways network, neighbours, etc. And it won't be discharged until the point, you know, we approve that, until they are happy with that, and they can't construct until that takes place. So they're always kind of added on to these sort of things. So most of those kind of demolition construction potential impacts all happen. It's all assessed post decision effectively, but they are considered by the local authority, and they can't build until we agree that with our environmental health team and highways.
Thanks, Louis. I'm going to bring in Jane. Got additional comments to add?
Yes, I was just going to say, I think also you have to think about in terms of the like robustness of the design, that would all be dealt with under the building regulations. I know from sort of personal experience, from a relative, that constructing these basement extensions can have an adverse impact on adjoining properties. So we'd have to make sure that it was all carried out in accordance with the building regs, and that there wasn't any adverse impact on the structure of adjoining properties.
Thank you, Jane. Councillor Kamali.
Sorry, I just needed a little clarification on community impact. How does this impact residents? I know you said 8 objection, but after the construction and everything's done, would this have an impact on residents as well? And if so, what kind of impact does it have? I know you said something, but I kind of didn't get all of it.
So I think part of the objection comments from the petition and also in the objection comments itself was the fact that this ground floor commercial unit could be seen as a community hub where people gather as well. And it's an important shop in the community. And again, just as discussed towards the end of the presentation, whilst that's considered very important, we have to just take into account our spatial objectives within national policy, London plan policy, and our local plan policy in consolidating commercial uses to the more compatible areas in town centres. And then if residential uses are proposed in residential areas like this one, it aligns with all the spatial objectives of all development plan, from the development plan from all scales, regional, London and local. So whilst I sympathise that it could be, or it is an important shop in the community, I just have to stress that we operate within planning policy, and that's what the policy dictates.
Okay.
Fair enough.
With any questions, if there's no more further questions from members, let's move now to the recommendations we have on the screen. So the Local Development Committee is asked to resolve to 1, refuse planning permission for the reasons set out on page 37 of the committee report. All those members who wish to vote on this item, please show your hands. Okay, that is unanimous and it's refused, and I suggest please work with officers and your architect to get the design, you bring it back. Okay, thank you very much. We got to item 8, which is 57 Hallsfield Road. Leah, you're presenting.
Thank you, Chair. Right, perfect. Okay. Good evening all. This is item 8 at number 57 Hallsfield Road. The application site is a 2-storey building located within a semicircular plot that fronts onto Hallsfield Road, Busgrove Road and Shirley Street. The site is locally listed and is located within the Canning Town Town Centre. The images on this slide shows an aerial context of the site at the junction of Hallsfield Road, Busgrove Road and Shirley Street, and a street image of the site. Both are viewed from the north. The images on this slide show the south elevation of the building, the interior and the view along Hallsfield Road, demonstrating the transformational change within the town space of Canning Town. The proposal is for an erection of a 6-storey mixed-use building following demolition of the existing pub building. The upper floors would accommodate residential uses, 18 units, whilst the ground floor would accommodate a commercial unit and ancillary spaces for the residential use above. Above are the key considerations for the proposed development. These are the principal, housing offer, quality of accommodation, urban design, heritage, amenity and transport. So just some key visuals. The images show from left to right the ground floor plan, the 1st to 4th floor plan and the 5th to 6th floor plan. Meanwhile, these images show the proposed elevations of the development as viewed along Shirley Street and Hallsfield Road. The proposed uses of residential and commercial are supported, given that they are desired uses for town centres under both the London Plan and Newham Local Plan. Furthermore, housing is much needed within the borough. No authoritative marketing evidence was submitted within this application to justify the loss of the pub as required under policy. However, consideration is given to the lack of local interest in the pub during the previous 13 years of it not operating as such, along with the proposed desired town centre uses the development would bring. This, along with the uplift in housing to the borough's housing stock, is considered to outweigh the loss of the existing pub. Furthermore, the development of a tall building in this location is supported in principle as the site is located within the Canning Town tall building area. Therefore, the principle of development is supported. Both the London Plan and Newham Local Plan require residential development to achieve a dwelling mix of larger and smaller homes. Policy H1's local plan requires major development to have a dwelling mix comprising of 39% family-sized homes. Whilst the proposed dwelling mix is a 27% family housing provision, consideration is given towards the viability of the development, site conditions and constraints, and the local context, as well as the good quality of accommodation the scheme provides. Both the London and Newham local plans require major development that delivers residential to also provide affordable housing. Following the submission of a viability assessment, which is being reviewed externally, the affordable housing offer provided is 11%, comprising of a 3-bedroom and 1-bedroom unit. Whilst the provisions under the desired threshold of 35%, consideration is also given again towards the reasonable mix of units, the balance of family housing provided, and the overall delivery of much needed housing. All of the proposed residential units will comply or exceed the specified space standards for internal and external living space. The units would also provide a good layout, including circulation space with a good provision of natural ventilation, natural light, and outlook. Out of the 18 units, 10 would be triple aspect and a further 5 will be dual aspect. Policy compliant wheelchair accessible units are also provided. Officers know that the quality of accommodation provided in this scheme balances the shortcomings in the proposed dwelling mix. To provide a mix of more 2 or 3 bedroom units in this current form would likely diminish the quality of accommodation overall. Therefore, the quality of accommodation and accessible housing is supported. The tall buildings policies of the development plan have design requirements regarding the development of a tall building, in particular regarding views and townscape. In this instance, it is considered that whilst the proposed development would be inevitably visible in some views, it would not cause a harmful impact upon local or wider views and skylines. This is given the appropriate height of the proposed building and the involving surrounding context of Canning Town. The height of the development is also considered to provide a good transition between the older post-war properties to the east and the taller modern developments to the west. The height and scale of the development is also considered suitable in respect to the scale of the site. The form of the building comprises of a single-storey pedestal base with the upper storeys chamfered at various parts as the building rises. The proposed development is considered to feature a palette of high-quality materials along with variation providing interest. The fenestration of the proposed building is considered robust and works well with the variation in facing materials. At ground floor level, the proposed residential entrance is considered to be legible and welcoming, whilst the proposed shop front for the commercial unit would result in an active frontage facing the road junction. The development is also considered acceptable in regard to crime prevention and fire safety, subject to conditions. Heritage and conservation. Policy HC1's London Plan and Policy SP5 for the Newham Local Plan require heritage assets and their settings to be conserved and enhanced. The building is locally listed by reason of its architectural interest. However, such interest has been removed or significantly eroded over time. On this slide is a photograph taken in 1931, and the majority of the features that you see in this picture have long gone. Taking into account the significant erosion, it is agreed that the demolition of the building would be considered substantial. However, such a substantial loss is considered to be outweighed by the enhancement to the local townscape arising from the proposed development, as well as a contribution to the borough's housing stock. Therefore, the development is supported in respect to heritage. Neighbouring amenity. The proposed development will not impact neighbouring occupiers to an adverse degree in regard to sunlight, daylight, outlook and privacy. The application was accompanied by a daylight and sunlight assessment. Officers consider taking into account the assessment, setback and form of the development and distance from neighbouring properties that there will be no harmful impact to neighbours in regard to daylight and sunlight. Upon approval, recommended conditions include a demolition and construction environmental plan and a condition restricting some Class E operations to maintain neighbouring amenity. Overall, it's considered there were no harmful impacts towards neighbouring amenity and is therefore supported. Transport. The site is in a PTAL of 6A, which indicates excellent access to public transport. The development will be car-free through no provision of parking spaces on site and secured by Section 106 agreement to restrict parking permits. This is justified given its PTAL rating. Through the secured highways works, an on-street parking space will be created along Shirley Street, which can be used by blue badge holders. The quantum of cycle parking and refuse storage provided is supported with condition recommended for their details respectively. The submitted travel plan is considered acceptable with monitoring and measures contributions secured by a Section 106 agreement. A condition is recommended for the submission of a delivery and servicing plan, which would also cover waste management. The recommended submission of a DCMP, as mentioned earlier, would also cover the transport and highways aspects during the construction phase of the development. The other considerations are listed on this slide, which are considered acceptable subject to Section 106 obligations and or conditions. Most notable is zero carbon contribution of £4,782.91 and employment contribution of £107,542. Therefore, it is recommended that the local development committee is asked to resolve to 1, agree the reasons for approval as set out in the committee report, and 2, delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development to grant planning permission, subject to completion of legal agreement and the conditions as listed in the report. Thank you.
And I move now to the applicants. Donna and Gavin, you objectors or?
So we're all the applicants.
All the applicants, okay.
Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Members, any questions?
No, Chair, just. No, that's a.
Councillor Patel, you come in first and I'll bring the comment.
Just wanted to ask about the premises at the moment. I mean, I see that it's been a public house, it's been a restaurant, and it's been a venue hire facility. Have people gone to it, or was it open and nobody went? What, you know, how much was it used?
As a venue hire facility.
Well, in fact, it's all three, really.
We work
Mainly.
We asked
for that.
Yeah, so we can answer that. So, I mean, the short answer is none of them have been particularly successful over the years. Obviously, you know, pubs have declined, and we all know people don't go to pubs so much. And since the pub closed in 2012, it's been a case of trying different activities and venues, but none of them have been successful enough to sort of provide an ongoing, you know, business that actually works. So yes, the venue hire is the current one. There has been some use of that, but it's not been very successful.
Yes, so it was, as it were, it was open but not used.
Yeah, I mean, it relies on people, you know, coming in and wanting to have you know, hire it for a birthday party or a wedding or some sort of function, but it's not been very successful.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Patel, you had
No, thanks, my comment was just, you know, separately the Mars building is growing, but we're welcoming the new development there as residents. It's welcoming them. Thank you.
Councillor Kamali.
Just a quick question, as I'm sure you probably have covered it, but I just wanted to get some kind of assurance. In terms with social housing and affordable housing, what percentage are we like getting?
So this would be 11%. So this was as a result of the viability assessment that was submitted and looked at by our independent assessor. So 11% is the maximum that this development can achieve in its current form. Any more would tip the balance, so the scheme might just not be deliverable at all, or any housing or development erected, constructed.
Is there anything within our terms or any conditions that if certain properties were to sell for a certain amount, that another flat could perhaps go towards affordable? Is there anything within?
Not necessarily, however, we have early and late stage review mechanisms in all of our Section 106 agreements. So effectively, as we all know, the market moves. If you don't build this for 3 years and then it takes you 2 years to build, 5 years time, there could be a different viability altogether. So that's the point of the kind of late stage review, which will then reassess viability at that point. And if there is kind of a surplus, then we can basically take the top of that again and invest that back into. At that point, it won't be changing tenure and getting more social housing from the development itself. Normally, it will be additional income into our own affordable housing schemes. So yeah, that will be assessed at that point. Normally when it's around, I think it's 80 or 85% of units are sold, we reassess looking at selling how that's gone and then take any additional.
Councillor Kamali, yeah.
And I just have one more question. I mean, yeah, how can you be assured the height wouldn't affect other building in terms of light and everything else? Because obviously it has an impact on other building in the place. So how could you be assured that it's okay?
So I think to clarify my point, I think the development would have an impact, but what we're assessing is that would it have an adverse impact? So in regards to the daylight sunlight assessment that was submitted, it did show there were some 2 or 3 shortcomings, but those windows were serving rooms that were also served by other windows. So those rooms in particular wouldn't have their complete levels to natural light eradicated. They do have another source within that room that faces a different direction, which wouldn't be impacted by the development. So from the results that the daylight sunlight assessment gave, as well as my review of the site and the context, the officers came to the conclusion that the harm would not be adverse or detrimental.
Do you know roughly like how many flats or how many building will affect?
It would affect, so 2 flats in, I think it's Alfred Dickens' house. I might have got the name wrong, but it's the one immediate to the southwest, because they're the ones, it has one window that faces directly onto the site, but it also has another window which serves that same room facing onto Hallsville Road.
Okay, thank you.
On top of that, have you managed to speak to the resident to say that this might affect them, or you have a meeting with them just to let them know?
So is under the legislation, giving them consultation letters, and as they are immediate neighbours, they would have had a consultation letter. I do think one response was received, but it wasn't to do with their daylight sunlight. I think it was to do with something about car parking and viewing a construction site. So unless I've been mistaken, I don't think there's anything explicit about their daylight or sunlight or any form of amenity.
I mean, I think that's generally.
Yes.
I was going to say that's generally because up until something's not built, people don't realize that it has a light effect on your property. Obviously, you're aware of the car parking because that's like an everyday issue. So yeah, okay, fair enough. Thank you.
I had a question around the heritage aspect of it. Yes, it's a fund that probably wasn't well used. We're looking at that black and white photo. It does kind of it's quite reminiscent of a lot of pubs which have gone missing or a lot of homes in the area. Is there a way that you could probably incorporate something to recognise and remember what was on that landmark within your designs, or any sort of plaques that we can say that this here stood X pub and now accommodation, whatever it might be.
So I mean, there's 2 ways one could do that. I mean, there is a sort of historic recording the building in its form. We submitted a heritage statement, which is where these sort of old photos and records come from. I think it would be possible to have some sort of, whether it was the name of the block, whether that contained the name, or as you say, there was some sort of reference to it in the design. For example, in the lobby of the flats, for example, you could have some sort of plaque or some sort of information. That would be another way of doing it. It's the kind of thing I suspect we could best secure as a condition or
yeah, I mean, if you want to do that as a condition, I'll have to work with you and work something out on that.
Yeah, it can be fine. I mean, it's a nice idea.
Yeah.
It's nice to.
Yes, it's good to remember it, and there's a lot of history in Canning Town and Custom House area, so it would be good to remember what was there if this does go through. Were there any further questions from members?
It's not really a question, but it's just a concern, I suppose, because it's following up from what Councillor Kamali said. Because as you said at the beginning, we do need housing in Newham. We've got 40,000 people on our housing register. Is this going to attract people from outside Newham who find, that's a nice place to get a flat, and so it's not addressing our Newham issue? It's a statement really rather, but it's a sort of question as well, because it's what concerns us most, I think.
Yeah, applicants like to
comment on it.
I mean, obviously, the housing need in Newham covers, all tenures, whether that's, social rented intermediate and market sale. The housing development market's incredibly challenging at the moment. I'm sure, you've noticed that in terms of the number of schemes or the lack of schemes that are coming forward. So, you know, this scheme will deliver 18 homes. They will provide accommodation for people who will live in the borough and contribute to the borough. You know, we all hope that the economic position will improve, because that ultimately is going to make life better for everyone. And, you know, as officers highlighted, you have this late stage review, which, you know, potentially could capture that, provide further benefits. Even if it doesn't, though, there are still 2 social rented units, which is more than there are at the moment. And I do realise in the context of your waiting list, that's a small number, but every little bit helps, as the phrase goes.
Jane, are you indicating to come in, or was that legacy hand?
No, I was going to say, I can't remember which scheme it was, but we did have a condition on another application where we asked for like the equivalent of a blue plaque to recognise the. So I think that's something we could do. And then on that point, the last point, it would only be the affordable units where we'd have nomination rights for Newham residents to go into them, but the applicants addressed that.
Sorry. Can I just get a clarity on Jane's question? You said something along the line of people living in the borough. So does that mean you're going to attract people only on Newham, or it's open to anyone?
When we have Section 106 agreements relating to affordable housing, it includes nomination rights. So that means that we can get people that are on our housing waiting list to go into them, but that's only for the social rent units. Otherwise, it would be open to, it wouldn't be exclusively to Newham, people living in Newham already. But the point is that, I mean, there's an affordable housing crisis, but there's also like a general housing crisis. So I don't think we should, you know, not have that in our minds, that there's a need for all types of housing tenure.
Any further?
I was just going to say, you know, it's outside the remit of planning to control open market housing and who buys that or rents that, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'm sure there'd be lots of councils that want to do something similar, but it's outside legislative control. So you can control, as Jane said, the social rent side of things, but unfortunately, the market rent, you know, the market sale is as open as every other one.
Okay. With any comments, questions? We'll now move to the recommendations. On screen, the Local Development Committee is asked to resolve 1, to agree the reasons for approval as set out in the committee report, the update report, and 2, delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Development to grant and permission subject to completion of legal agreement under Section 106 and further details there. Would those members wish to show their support for this application, please show your hands. 1, 2, 6. Abstentions? 1 abstention, no against. So that is carried and that's approved. Thank you very much.
Chair, 1 correction of the meeting should be 24, not 3rd.
Thank you very much.
Sunday. I'm happy to come.
Next one. Okay, so last and final item is item 9, dated the next meeting, and it should be the 23rd.
Sorry?
23rd or 24th? 24th.
23rd is
Monday. Okay.
It's exactly the same dates as February.
Yes. So we'll keep that 24th.
Yeah.
That's the meeting closed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
We have received by